She's a heterosexual woman who likes bisexual men.
What's good, good people? I'm OBO, and in case you didn't know, I'm the G in LGBTQ, and you're watching It's Just Not Adding Up. So get in here and act like you got some sense. We're about to create some space.
I'm low-key nervous to have this conversation.
Yeah?
Only because whenever I bring up bisexuality, it becomes a thing. Because so many people have such strong opinions about it.
They do.
Like, such strong opinions about it. But I do want to advocate for bisexual men, especially, as often as I can.
I identified as bisexual from the start of my journey. That was part of my coming out narrative, so to speak, what I communicated to people. However, once I came out the closet at 17 during my summer going into my senior year of high school. I came out to my immediate family. Okay. Let's say that. I was outed at school in a different scenario. Long story continued. In that senior year, in the suburbs, everybody knew my identity from that point. But then after high school, I went to college in the city. And I was assumed straight in that environment. So for about 3 to 4 years, I'd say from 17 to about 23 years, I was out of the closet in my experience living as a gay man, only dealing with other men while saying bisexual. Yeah. Within that, I kind of took on an identity of a gay man as far as how I lived my life and what I saw myself having access to or making an option. There was this idea of women that I'd be rejected for being who I was. So I just chose what seemed simpler and was newer. Also, I hadn't been able to explore this. I had always been dealing with women. So my sophomore year in college, I meet a girl in class. We have a lot of chemistry. She's a beautiful girl, the type of girl that in my normative mind was the kind of girl I think I would marry. And we just clicked. Yeah. From that point, we actually started dating. And it was just a random occurrence. It wasn't planned for me. But at that point, I went back into the closet. And I cut off all of my gay friends. And I told the girl that I had been bisexual. And my dad's a pastor, by the way. But I told her that I had been bisexual, but with church, that I no longer lived that lifestyle. And I more so told her that on the front end and then made it real on the back end. Okay. So deleted my Facebook, my Instagram, started a new one, and picked up the pieces from there, and we kept moving forward. Yeah. After that relationship didn't work, I think a part of me believed that turning completely away from guys at that point would bring me more toward what it was I was looking for out of life. Especially with church being associated. This kind of like shadow of what you learned, waiting to say I told you so, and you believing that your outcomes are related to that. Yeah. But from that point, when it didn't work, it was just this challenging aspect of, okay, well, you convinced yourself that by doing all of this and, you throwing yourself in the church, separating yourself from this, it was going to bring you an outcome. Yeah. But here you are, you still have the same urges toward both sexes, and you have the realization that this wasn't the end all be all. And at that point, I was just at a crossroads of deciding, okay, I like women. This is affirmed. I've already now, the same family that thought I was gay see me with this girl for the last 2 years. I've proven myself in that respect, quote unquote. Yeah. It's already been proven that I'm not straight on the opposite respect, and people believe that way easier. Now I have to make my identity and find myself in the middle. And that was that, yes, I like women. Yes, I like men. And everybody just has to kind of get together and get on with the reality. Or not. But from that point forward, I made sure I don't oversay, like someone will say, in conversation, I'll say, as a gay man. Just because there's a certain level of security that I have a recognition that bisexuality was and historically is used as a cop-out to appease the people who don't agree with your sexuality. Yeah. So I don't want to overstate bisexual to make, I just feel like that could be a little...
Some people in their coming out journey said bisexuality, said they were bisexual first. Correct. Because they wanted to kind of make it a little bit more palatable. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It makes it easier to digest if I hold out a little piece of hope for women. That way you don't have to like, oh my God, you know?
Yeah.
So did you know that bisexuality existed growing up? Like, honestly, I don't think I even knew the term. I knew gay, lesbian, and straight.
I knew bisexual. I did.
I never heard that.
You know, I watched a lot of episodes of Real Sex as a kid.
What's Real Sex?
See, I'm a few years older, so only 3. But, you know, but no, Real Sex was just like this show on HBO that would just document types of sex and sex practices and different ways of doing things. You know, kind of like hippie-ish approach to sex. But yeah, so I knew about bisexuality.
We talked about this offline, but I think it's such a beautiful point to make. You were talking a little bit about the amount of times you're with either gender doesn't dictate your bisexuality.
Absolutely.
And I think for a lot of people, they feel like in qualifying someone else's bisexuality, even though that shouldn't take place, we hear stuff like, when was the last time you was with a girl? Or like, you know, you ain't, you know, and can you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah. First, let me say that I think the reason people do that is because they need something to confirm their own beliefs. Because they're starting from the belief that bisexuality doesn't exist. Just like the boogeyman and Santa Claus don't exist. So they are asking you certain questions to prove their point and disprove your point. By quantifying your sexuality by the amount of times or the frequency or the last time you were with the opposite sex.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I believe that sexuality is truly a spectrum. And just like gender identity is a spectrum, there's someone who's going to be saying, I am a trans man and this is what that means for me. And then someone else is saying, I'm a trans man, but I still have sex with men and I identify as a gay trans man and that's my identity, you know? So it's a spectrum. You have some people who are 70% women, let's say a man who is 70% women and 30% men. You have another man who is 30% women and 70% men. You have somebody who's 90-10. It might be 90% of the time I'm not looking at a woman, but there's one girl out of every 10 or maybe out of 100 that'll catch my eye and it's like, I would mess around with her. Yeah. But it's just not open range for everybody.
Yeah. And I feel like it's not fair to do it, especially with sex. Because I feel like I have friends who are in their 30s and are virgins.
Yeah.
But still know how they're oriented.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think it's not about how often or when you have sex with the thing. I think it's legitimately an orientation, which is why I think I like the fact that we're saying orientation even more than we say sexuality, because I think it can be a little confusing.
Yeah.
So has your masculinity ever been in question either externally or internally because of your orientation? Like, do you find yourself when you're dealing with women being one way and when you're with men being another way?
I think generally speaking, historically speaking, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that caused me a lot of internal anxiety in general, just because of that reality.
Yeah.
Do I live in that now? 85% no. There's still 15% of work I know I have to do in order to get to an 100% place of not being compelled by that. But yes, there's trigger. You know, there's code switching that happens as a masculine identifying man of, you know, LGBT experience.
Yeah.
You do a lot of code switching from moving from your straight world of your straight identity and only knowing things from your upbringing to your more expanded LGBT existence, you know? So it's just a hard trucking journey. Yeah.
So what do you think needs to happen to make the experience a little bit easier for someone else?
What needs to happen to make that experience easier?
Like, do you think about the ways in which, again, all of us deal with trauma, all of us deal with outside opinions, but I think when it comes to the bisexual experience, I think a lot of us deal with, I legitimately like both genders.
Yeah.
Right? And so in me liking both genders, there's also a part of me that likes the opposite gender. And who I can be during those times may not be who I can be during the times I'm with the same gender. I often talk about the fact that I can openly and freely talk about my experiences with women to my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. But vice versa, the thought of me talking about a penis or whatever with a girl just doesn't feel like an option.
I have it. You know what we can do?
What's up?
Be authentic. There's just a thing about, from the time that I started being in the public eye over the last several years, whether through the internet or through social media, there have been people who've wrote me, and I've been really perplexed by certain women who have written me to express their attraction to me with their awareness of my bisexuality, and just open my eyes to the fact that there are different types of women, people in the world.
Yeah.
And just because we have been taught and our environments have reflected that this is what exists, there's so many other people who you haven't spoken to. You don't know what's in their head. That you just walk by them and you think that she only thought you was cute because she thinks you straight, and the whole time she already can smell it on you, and she don't care, and she might like that. I had a girl who specifically likes bisexual men, and she is not a bisexual woman. She's a heterosexual woman who likes bisexual men. Which was a mind to me, because the idea of bartering with bisexuality is familiar. I like women and men, you like women and men, we can meet in the middle. But someone saying, I only like men, but you can like men too, and we'll bring them in, and that's her thing. It's not a compromise, it's a different feeling in what it feels like to be within your sexuality, interact with a woman who says, I specifically want you. So with that type of a reality, if we move through the world, if we change our perspective from what doesn't want us, what doesn't attract us, into a perspective that the way we are, if we project that confidently, those who want that will seek us out. Will find us, or will attract them. Then the law of attraction will bring that to me. So it's just a certain authenticity and the confidence we move in that brings us everything we want. As a gay man, a bisexual man, a straight man, woman, whatever you are, authenticity is going to bring you to outcomes.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. I think a lot of our experiences, our traumas, the violence that we've heard, whether verbal, physical, mental, I think it deters us from that authenticity. It makes it scary. It makes us feel like our authenticity has no place.
Yeah.
And when you feel like there's no place for it, then what do? You tend to hide, or tend to contort, or contour yourself into being who you think other people need you to be, or that you think, or be the person that you think will put you in position to receive the things that you want.
Yeah.
So I love that you just said, like, be yourself and those things will come to you. Now, someone should say what time they'll come, because a lot of us get sick of but I think that's the real part. And so as somebody's on that authenticity journey, if we're talking to a young person, say something to a young guy, right, who is even navigating, he hasn't even landed on bisexuality yet, but he's just navigating himself. Is there any advice, any tools you would recommend?
Trust your mind, trust your body, and trust your spirit. There will be outside influences. There already are outside influences that are making your journey a bit confusing. But listen to the inside of you, and not in a mystical hoopla way, but very organically. Listen to what tenses your body. Listen to what relaxes you. Listen to what brings you joy, what makes you stressed or unhappy, and make good choices to get the outcomes that you want from there, one step at a time.
I say this often, there's who you are, who you want to be, and who you have to be.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of us, we're who we have to be for our entire life. You're who you have to be to survive, who you have to be to pay bills, who you have to be to deal with family, who you have to be to deal with friends, who you have to be to wake up in the morning. That's who you have to be. And so I think if you can find a way, find a pocket to allow yourself to be who you want to be.
Yeah. Like,
give yourself a little bit of space to be who you want to be. When that couples with the reality of who you have to be, I think you'll find who you truly are.
Mm-hmm.
And I reckon. Listen, I'm not saying this lightly. I recognize it is a process. Because for again, a lot of us are who we have to be for so long.
Yeah.
And then I think the gotcha though is when you let go of who you think you have to be, you'll realize that you really didn't have to be that person.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I could add one more piece of advice from that statement,
please.
Who you have to be, who you want to be, and who you are. The who you are part is internal. It doesn't necessarily start with. It's a part of the journey, telling other people and being confident in telling other people.
Yeah.
But the key component starts with acceptance of who you are. And that is a very quiet dance. So whether someone is closeted, planning to come out of the closet, or has no idea in their journey when that would even be feasible, they don't have to not have a mended identity within themselves. You can be secure and who you are internally first before you start becoming ready to share that. So if you aren't at a point in your growth where you're ready to start sharing who you are with somebody else, start sharing who you are with yourself.
Yeah.
Start being honest internally with yourself about what you feel and not fighting certain things about who you are and just saying, this is who I am. I'm just not ready to share. It's an affirmation of certain self-ownership that needs to start in everybody's journey. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Keep creating space.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace.
Oh, that's so good.